looking, just going to throw it deep for Jones, double coverage. Oh, what a catch! Touchdown!
Bears fans, something is different this year, and you can feel it. The same franchise that handed out 68 sacks in a single season fired a head coach mid-season for the first time in history and broke your heart more times than you can count, is suddenly looking like one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL. How did that happen? 2 words, Ben Johnson. But here's what most people are missing. Johnson didn't rebuild the Chicago Bears. He completed them. And the foundation was already being quietly laid for years before he ever walked through that door.
Target in the draft last year, and they're going to be a big part of what we're doing going forward. Neither one of them had a full offseason.
Every draft pick, every painful loss, every front office gamble led to this moment. Stay with us, because what this rebuild reveals will genuinely change how you see this Bears team forever. The losing years that actually paid off. For the better part of a decade, being a Chicago Bears fan felt like a punishment. Caleb Williams. That name matters. But before Williams ever threw a pass in the NFL, someone had to build the conditions that made it possible for him to land in Chicago. And that story starts not with a victory, but with a string of very painful losses. Between 2020 and 2023, the Bears posted a 4-13, 6-11, 3-14, and 7-10 record.
We struggled with that defense here for both games that we played them in 2023.
4 straight losing seasons. The kind of seasons that make fans question everything. The coaching staff, the front office, the roster construction, all of it. But here's the thing about losing in the NFL. Done right, it builds you a pipeline. General manager Ryan Poles came in for the 2022 season. And while he wasn't exactly setting the world on fire with his win-loss record, he was doing something quietly important, finding real talent in the early rounds of the draft. In 2022, Poles selected Kyle Gordon and Jaquan Brisker in the 2nd round. 2 names that Bears fans probably didn't throw a party for at the time. But fast forward to today, and both players are legitimate starters on this defense. Gordon earned a 3-year extension ahead of the 2025 season that made him the highest-paid slot corner in the entire NFL. In 15 games during the 2024 season alone, he logged 75 tackles, 5 pass breakups, 3 fumble recoveries, and a forced fumble. That's not just good value, that's a steal from round 2. Brisker has been equally steady. He has recorded at least 1 interception in each of his 4 seasons in Chicago, added 7 sacks to his resume, and consistently been among the team's top tacklers. For a safety picked in the 2nd round, that production is exceptional. 5th-round pick Braxton Jones also slotted into the offensive line rotation and provided usable depth.
Left tackle Braxton Jones in the 5th round of the 2022 draft.
Not every pick is a home run, but Poles was consistently hitting on the ones that matter most. The loss was real, the frustration was real, but the draft capital being accumulated was quietly building a foundation, or the trade that changed everything. There is one decision in Chicago Bears history, at least in recent memory, that stands above all others. And it happened not because the Bears made the right pick, but because someone else made a catastrophically wrong one. In 2023, the Bears owned the 1st overall pick in the NFL draft. The expectation from fans was simple: use it on a quarterback and start fresh. But Ryan Poles had a different read on the situation. He believed Justin Fields deserved one more chance to prove himself, so he traded that 1st overall pick to the Carolina Panthers. In return, Chicago received the 9th overall pick, a 2nd-round selection in 2023, a 1st-round pick in 2024, a 2nd-round pick in 2025, and wide receiver DJ Moore. At the time, plenty of Bears fans were furious. You don't trade away a top pick. That's just not how rebuilds work. Except Carolina used that pick on Bryce Young.
In that first game, you had one of your best games. I think it was the 2nd best passer rating in Panthers history.
Who proceeded to have one of the most difficult rookie seasons any quarterback had seen in years. Young struggled enormously behind a poor offensive line in a chaotic organization with no real infrastructure around him. Meanwhile, Chicago's haul from that trade was quietly turning into gold. With the 9th overall pick in 2023, the Poles selected right tackle Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. Again, there was grumbling. Fans wanted a pass rusher. They wanted Jalen Carter. Instead, they got an offensive lineman. But Wright made the NFL all-rookie team in his first season, and by 2025, under Ben Johnson's system, he had become a cornerstone of what is now one of the most dominant offensive lines in football. Through 13 weeks of the 2025 season, Wright earned a 78.5 offensive grade from Pro Football Focus, giving up just 1 sack and 1 hurry. The Bears are physically overwhelming opponents at the line of scrimmage, and Wright is a major reason why. That same 2023 draft also brought in Gervon Dexter and Tyrique Stevenson in round 2. Both became starters on the Bears defense. Stevenson, notably, was selected with one of the picks that came directly from the Carolina trade. One trade, multiple starters. A first overall pick is waiting in the pipeline. Poles had just pulled off the most important move in the Bears' rebuild, and most people didn't realize it yet. The jackpot nobody saw coming here is something that rarely happens in the NFL. A team finishes with a bad record, trades away its first overall pick for a package of future assets, and then watches as that traded pick transforms through another team's failure into the first overall selection again. That is exactly what happened to Chicago. The first-round pick Carolina gave the Bears in 2024 ended up being the first overall pick in the draft.
The Bears, they are trading their #1 overall pick in this year's draft. As the Bears trading the #1 overall pick to the Panthers in exchange for big-time compensation.
Because Carolina had been that bad. Sitting at the top of that 2024 draft was Caleb Williams, a quarterback out of USC who had already won a Heisman Trophy as a sophomore, who had all the physical tools and mental makeup to be a franchise cornerstone in the NFL for the next 15 years. Williams is the kind of player teams spend decades trying to find. He can extend plays, he can deliver throws that shouldn't be possible, he sees the field the way only a handful of quarterbacks in any given era can. And Chicago got him for free. Or rather, they got him because they had the patience and foresight to trust a process that nobody else believed in. But the 2024 draft didn't stop there. At pick 10, the Bears' own selection, Poles added Rome Odunze, a wide receiver out of Washington who brought rare size and route running ability to the room. Odunze had all the ingredients to be a quarterback's best friend. Great hands, impressive catch radius, and smooth movement for someone his size. The idea was clear. I build a young core around Williams, give him weapons, give him time, and let the system develop naturally. In practice, 2024 was a disaster. The offensive line is still not properly rebuilt, allowed 68 sacks on the season, the third most in NFL history. Offensive coordinator Shane Waldron was fired after 9 games with the offense ranked 30th in total yards and 24th in scoring. Head coach Matt Eberflus followed weeks later, becoming the first Bears head coach ever fired during an active season.
I realize it's just a preseason game, but it's the first game you've ever been the head coach of.
Chicago ended 5-12 at the bottom of the NFC North for a third straight year. Williams finished with 3,541 yards, 20 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. The man who changed the culture. Every rebuild needs a moment, a hire, a decision that separates what the team was from what it's going to become. For the Chicago Bears, that moment was Ben Johnson. Johnson had spent years as the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, turning a franchise that was once the league's laughingstock into one of its most exciting and productive offenses. He developed Jared Goff into one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. He built a run-game identity that made Detroit nearly impossible to defend. He understood how to take talented pieces and connect them in ways that maximized everyone's strengths. When Eberflus was fired and the Bears coaching search began, Johnson was the hottest name on the market. Every struggling team wanted him. He was in a position where he could essentially choose his destination. He chose Chicago. He chose Caleb Williams. That vote of confidence, a coach of Johnson's caliber deliberately building his head coaching career around this specific quarterback, was worth more than any free agent signing. It told Williams that someone who could go anywhere believed in him. It told the fan base that the next chapter was real. But Johnson didn't just bring belief. He brought a blueprint. The first thing on his list was fixing that offensive line. He and Poles moved quickly. Drew Dahlman was signed at center in free agency. Jonah Jackson, who had played under Johnson in Detroit, was traded in to play guard. Joe Thuney, a veteran who had won 4 Super Bowls with the Patriots and Chiefs, arrived to anchor the other guard spot. This was a completely rebuilt interior, and it showed immediately once the 2025 season found its rhythm. On the defensive side, Poles brought in Grady Jarrett to reinforce the interior line alongside Montez Sweat off the edge. Suddenly, this defense had teeth it hadn't shown in years. In the 2025 draft, Johnson got his playmakers.
Going into the draft, our goal was to really lean on the board.
Colston Loveland, a tight end from Michigan, was selected 10th overall and immediately drew comparisons to Sam Laporta, who had thrived in Johnson's system in Detroit. Then in round 2, Luther Burden arrived as one of the most explosive skill players in the entire draft class. And the message was unmistakable. Johnson was surrounding his quarterback with weapons and building this offense in his own image. The 2025 rise. The 2025 season did not start the way anyone hoped. Week 1, a messy loss to the Minnesota Vikings. Week 2, Detroit, Johnson's old team, came to town and made a statement, handling Chicago decisively. 2 games in, and the same old Bears crowd was out in full force. Then something shifted. Week 3 against Dallas, Caleb Williams threw 4 touchdown passes. Chicago won 31-4. The offensive line was holding. The run game was actually working. From there, wins over Las Vegas, Washington, and New Orleans put the Bears at 4-3 through 7 weeks. The victories were close, which kept the skeptics alive. Was Chicago actually good or just catching breaks against weak opponents? Those questions got answered in a 5-game winning streak that ran from Week 9 to Week 13. They beat Cincinnati in a shootout, matching points with one of the NFL's most talented offenses. They ground out a division win over Minnesota in Week 11. They put 31 points on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had the most expensive defense in the league. And then in Week 13, they knocked off the Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning Super Bowl champions. By Thanksgiving, Caleb Williams led the entire NFL in fourth-quarter comebacks with 5. These weren't garbage time stats. The numbers behind the resurgence were real. After 13 weeks, Chicago was averaging 153.8 rushing yards per game, second in the NFL. Through the first 4 weeks, no Bears running back had cracked 63 yards in a single game. Then the offensive line clicked, the scheme kicked in, and the ground game exploded. 7th-round pick Kyle Monangai emerged as a legitimate weapon in the backfield. Colston Loveland began showing the traits that made scouts rave: a willing blocker, a receiving mismatch, and an athlete who creates problems defenses simply aren't built to handle. Rome Odunze flashed the receiver he can be. Luther Burden brought explosive playmaking ability off the bench as his role expanded week by week. Here is what the record shows. A franchise that was historically broken 3 years ago is now one of the most dangerous teams in football. Caleb Williams is getting better every single week. The offensive line that was a national embarrassment in 2024 is now physically dominating people. Ben Johnson is already doing in Chicago what he did in Detroit, and he's only getting started. The wild part? This is still just the beginning. Loveland, Odunze, Burden, and Monangai, these players are rookies and second-year guys. The ceiling hasn't been reached, not even close. The Chicago Bears aren't just back, they're being built to last. Drop your prediction in the comments. How far does this Bears team go?